Welcome to Fireteam Chat, IGN's Destiny show. Thank you so much for joining us. Joining me today on the show is Brian Malkowitz.
CT.
And Travis Northup.
McClunky from quarantine.
That's right. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about, as we said last week, we're going to talk about strikes. We actually learned more about the Grandmaster Ordeal strikes that are coming on April 21st. And we're also going to talk about a lot of the controversy that's been happening in the community. So to start, let's get right into the news of the Grandmaster Nightfall. Right off the top of the show, I'm just going to read what they said on the TWAB. In a few weeks, we'll debut a new difficulty selection for the ordeal called Grandmaster. It will test your Fireteam's coordination, communication, builds, and skill like no other activity in Destiny to date. Here's a look at a few of the goals we had when approaching Grandmaster after we saw how the rest of the ordeal was received. Grandmaster should build on Master difficulty, but be significantly more challenging. Once you reach a certain bar, the challenge should be found completely in perfecting your builds, communication, and execution. The primary rewards should be doled out on initial completion. Completion should be the primary metric for success rather than the score or time or another inactivity metric like killing all champions. Grandmaster should stress the top end of build crafting. Grandmaster should be watchable. That's all right.
It's a pretty low bar.
Yeah. I mean, that last one threw me off. So the attempt, here's what they say. To attempt Grandmaster, you will need to be power level 1025, which is 15 power above the pinnacle cap, but will be 25 power below the activity, which will be set at a power level of 1050. We're also going to have something similar to the contest mode we introduced for Crown of Sorrow. You will gain no extra advantage for being higher than 1025. We wanted to require a mixture of pinnacle rewards and artifact power to get you prepared for this, but not make you feel like you had to put in a ton of extra hours over leveling the activity. Well, man, I don't know about you guys, but I'm sold. You know what would extra sell it? Extinguish, limited revives, and a small pool of shared team revives. And you get more every time you kill a champion. That would really sell it for me.
Look, I'll start with positives on this.
Okay.
I'm glad it's not relying on time to determine your rewards, like 100K Nightfall or something like that. But
that's the end of the list of positives.
That's the end of the list. That's the end of the list. I don't like the contest mode is 1000% something that needs to be communicated a month ago.
Yeah,
like because you have all these people who were preparing themselves for Grandmaster Nightfalls to get as close to 1060 as possible, and then you come out with just like a wrecking ball saying, no, just kidding. You only need to be 1025 because it doesn't matter if you're above that.
But wait, Brian, there's more.
Yeah, go ahead.
So does that sound like a worthy challenge so far? Bungie hopes it does. And as a reward, you'll have increased chances of being awarded exotic armor and masterworking materials.
Imagine making it an increased chance and not a guaranteed chance to get an exotic.
Starts April 21st.
The other thing that's weird is that it gives you masterworking materials, but they've made it pretty clear in the description of the event that the whole point is that your builds are going to matter, right? So you probably already have your masterworked god tier armor set. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to complete the event if it's as hard as they're advertising. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hadn't read the TWAB yet, so I'm largely reacting to this in person, and I am so underwhelmed. So it's a hard Nightfall. All right,
Well, the thing is,
they
didn't need to bring all this attention to it. Like, we knew what Grandmaster Nightfalls were. It's like, hey, here's a harder version of Nightfalls, and then they brought so much more attention towards it that we didn't need. Like, we didn't need to add the contest mode. You didn't need to treat Grandmaster Nightfalls as if it was like a raid that you're dropping on the 21st. Like, it's just harder Nightfalls. It's not. It's kind of like they're kind of like masking the fact that this isn't really crazy new content, and it's like, what if we make a big deal about it? It's like, we don't need to make a big deal about it. It's just a harder Nightfall. Just let it be that.
Yeah, I think they're really messing up with the rewards for this activity. So They already reworked strikes a while back, and they added sparrows you could get. There's the rocket launcher. There was the coveted hand cannon. Do you guys remember the name of it? After I want to
Warden's
say
Law.
no.
Warden's Law. Yeah, that's the one from
Warden Law's from Warden of Nothing.
Warden of Nothing strike. Yeah,
I mean, even
Mindbender's
that,
Ambition is the one that people care about.
DFA. I want to say it was DFA.
Oh, DFA. You're right. Yeah, DFA.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
You're thinking of DFA.
Yeah. So way back in the day, that one was like everybody was going for that. I think there was a sniper also, but they were all nerfed, so they were no longer like the weapon that you wanted, and that's why I can't remember their names, because this game has this problem where every time there's a coveted weapon, it gets tweaked.
Get used to that.
Yeah, it's just not usable anymore.
Now it's their model. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was there when Whisper of the Worm was the best gun in the game, and then it went away. And that's just, Destiny sort of in a nutshell. You have these coveted challenges.
Look, all things considered, I was there when Merciless was the best gun in the game. Like, we're in a much better position. Yeah, exactly. We're in a lot of better positions now than then. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. Also, it's still not too late to change Conqueror to Grandmaster. Still don't know why the title for the Grandmaster Nightfalls isn't Grandmaster.
Yeah,
for me,
it's a little weird.
For me, dude, it's all about the reward. Well,
it is.
What if they had done like some amazing armor set that you had to like do all the strikes to acquire, the way that like this would be the PvE equivalent of Trials, right? Every week Trials has a new map. And we can talk about Trials again if you want, and the challenges there.
There's nothing different to talk about.
Yeah, so like right below this in the TWAB, they have the Iron Banner armor, and at the forefront is the Iron Banner armor set. They could have even just tweaked the existing armor sets to look better and give them a cosmetic thing that you could apply to it. But man, just saying an increased chance at an exotic and materials. There's already an awesome farm going on that people are having a blast with, just running through the same strike over and over again, and it's actually been fun for a lot of the content creators out there.
You're talking about the double loot from the Nightfall?
Yeah, the double loot from the Nightfall.
that was exclusive to Warden of Nothing, so that glitch kind of isn't happening anymore because of that strike. That's why it was happening, but yeah, like it's kind of weird, because it's like, oh yeah, you get increased chances of doing this, at these rewards at 1050, and it's like I can just save myself a ton of stress and just do this on a step below Grandmaster, and then get through these strikes way faster and get rewards faster. Like it depends on how much they're increasing the chance of these rewards. If they're more consistent with Master Nightfalls.
Your battery level's low, like Brian.
Exchange battery, please.
In case you were wondering. So Brian's icon's going to go away as he adjusts that. The reaction to this has been largely the same as mine. It's sort of underwhelming. Travis, you said that there were some positives that you like about this. So
yes.
Why do you like this?
The first thing I like is that there's a cap on power. Obviously, that's going to make it way harder. But the thing that it does that's good is it means that there's not a ridiculous power grind. We've talked about on the show a lot about how under the new model, your power level doesn't really matter because of the artifact, right? Now with 1025, if you have 1010 power and then 15 on your artifact, you'd be 1025. Which is 15 on the artifact is kind of like if you're playing a lot but not, doing the moon grind or whatever. And then 1010 obviously means you're playing a ton and you're always doing the pinnacle activities. So there is kind of a reason now to finally to do the pinnacle activities and gear up to 1010, which I think in previous seasons there was really no activity that catered to that. So that's good. And then also, it's not, Brian was saying that, the community was rushing to get as close to 1060 as possible. Now you don't need to do that, which is awesome because people like me, I play a ton of Destiny. There's no way I would get to 1060 or anywhere close to it, right? Like I'm at 1021 right now. So I'm 4 power away from being ready for the Grandmaster Ordeal. And if it were 1060, that wouldn't be really feasible at all for me to get there because I'm playing a lot. So.
Yeah. Sorry for the technical difficulties on this episode. I also adjusted Brian's audio so that it was sort of more in line. If you're watching the video, you're getting a little bit of behind the scenes this episode. But yeah, that's sort of where we're at. So next up, let's just talk about how the community has reacted.
Mm-hmm.
So Glad has publicly stated that he is taking a break from Destiny to date other video games. that's the way I phrase it.
Is that a quote? Oh no, it's that you're phrasing it that way.
It's his interpretation.
I like phrasing it that way a little bit more. And if I go over here and I just check out, here's exactly what he said. I won't be playing
It was
Trials.
A series of tweets.
Yeah. He said, I won't be playing Trials today. After reading, there won't be much of a loot difference for the Grandmaster Nightfalls, and that it's just a completion goal. I lost interest. You do get a title for completing the new strikes, by the way. Besides,
you have to do each week in order to get it without skipping.
Yeah.
But
so besides Tuesday recess to see if something's new, you may not see me on D2 much for the next 2 seasons. TLDR, I'm not going anywhere, far from it. Foot is still on the gas. You're going to get the same old me, the same old hamster jokes, the same old weirdness. I'm just going to be beating up different bad guys from time to time. And you know, somebody like Glad, like we do this show once a week. We play Destiny pretty regularly. I can absolutely understand why somebody would become fatigued with a franchise, especially if that's the main game that you have to play all the time. And Bungie
crazy.
always said it's totally healthy to take breaks from games, right? So I get it. I get where he's coming from. And I don't think anybody should be freaking out, because I think the immediate reaction is, of course, always going to be, oh, Bungie screwed up or Bungie made a mistake. But I don't think that's the case. I think he's taking a break, and I think that's healthy if that's what he's doing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with playing other games while there's a lull in the game. The question I do want to pose to everybody on the panel, we can start with you, Brian. Do you feel like this seasonal model has been successful, or it's been a mistake?
The seasonal model has been successful. We've seen it work with Season of Opulence. And I know that, but I think Bungie has addressed this before, that amount of content per season is kind of draining on them. So the result was like, hey, what if we do like an extra season but with less content? So if we're going the route of what we're dealing with now, then no, it's not a success. But we've already seen a success with Season of Opulence. That is the bar that I hold seasons to. And I think that Bungie should be striving for if they're going to continue this model. If not, then I think it's just better to separate content drops like it was year one, where we had Cursed and Warmind and Forsaken, regardless of whether you think those expansions were good or not. Just having regular meteor content drops feels a little bit better. But as it seems now, especially with this content, with it feeling like it's reusing so many different things that we've already done so much of in the past, it's not a good outlook for the game.
So I agree with a lot of what you said. I've been seeing a lot of negativity surrounding Trials, and I fully admit that there are a ton of problems with Trials. The beaver errors are not good. The stability issues, the hacking issues, it's really tarnished the experience for a lot of players.
The rewards not dropping.
The rewards not dropping. I had 75 tokens last week that were just gone. Like I can't utilize those, and that's a big detriment to the game. It's not in a great place. Compounding it with this season that has been largely dull. A lot of people are sort of echoing that sentiment that the bunkers just aren't that enticing in terms of gameplay.
I mean, they're not enticing at all in terms of gameplay, I think.
Yeah. And in terms of like if this model is working or not, I think that has to be a hard no if you're a Destiny player. Like, it's quality over quantity, right? It is what we should need. And in the past, we've had much smaller and less regular content drops, but the content has been a lot more substantial. We've had raids even in the year after Forsaken. We had raids with each drop, which I think was probably a little ambitious in terms of content, especially since they've lost access to 2 of their auxiliary studios development teams. But I would say, if Bungie has the philosophy of it's okay to take breaks, then like have a model that lets us take breaks, because right now the expectation is you're constantly creating content and it's time gated over these weeks, and it kind of like forces you to log on, but then when you log on there's nothing to actually do, or nothing substantial really. So I've thought ever since they switched to this model where there's like 5 or 6 seasons a year or whatever it is that they're doing, where I'm just like, why? Like, make it 3 or even 2, or every 6 months we get something the size of Forsaken or Shadowkeep, and then we can take a break and play other games and come back. And then the people who are really dedicated, they can grind for roles and stick around for trials and stuff like that. I'll probably be one of those people a lot of the time, but yeah, I don't know why they're doing this model where they have so many seasons and everything's time gated and kind of like piecemeal. It just seems like a really a model that's going to grate and get on the nerves of the players who are expected to log on week after week for very little.
Yeah, and I think we can expect the next thing, or the same thing for the next 2 seasons. Glad specifically said the next few seasons you're probably not going to see me very much. I think a lot of content creators are just like, all right, this is what we're getting for the foreseeable future. They've shown us what they're able to create within this new model, and it's not compelling. So I'm going to take a break. I'm going to play other games. That's absolutely fine. I wonder how Bungie is going to take this feedback, if they can make adjustments, if this is part of the COVID-19 issue that they're probably dealing with as a studio, which I do commend them a lot for how they've managed to handle the whole COVID-19 thing and still support their employees.
If their seasonal model is at all being afflicted by the COVID issues, I think we're going to be seeing those repercussions next season as opposed to this one. As far as like content abundance.
So do you guys think that this is going to put Destiny in a troublesome spot? Because, we're really in the community. We're constantly talking about stuff that's going on. We're either playing or we're not. But I'll look up the Steam numbers right now. I'm willing to bet you that they're still high.
Probably.
So
I think gaming is up like at an all-time high just across the board. You've heard like multiple studio executives like say that stuff. So I don't doubt that there aren't players and there aren't people doing trials and that sort of thing. But
Destiny 2's peak today is 85,000. I think the lowest I've ever seen it was
just on Steam.
Yeah, just on Steam. I think the lowest I've ever seen it is in the sub 50, like 20, 30, but it's usually it's always on the top 100. It's never been beaten by the top 100.
Sure.
For some comparative analytics, though, the games that are beating it or near it, Team Fortress 2 is 82,000 peak today. Rocket League has 90,000 peak today. Monster Hunter World, for some reason, had 150,000 peak today, but current player 65,000. Yeah. And they maintain this space that usually top 20, 25 in games played, and they're up against Counter-Strike, Dota 2, PUBG, Mountain Blade, Grand Theft Auto 5, Rainbow Six Siege, Football Manager 2020, Ark Survival Evolved. So I don't
That's
think
what we're all here for.
Well, here's the thing. There's still 82,000 people playing the game right now as we're recording this show, right?
On Steam. That's not including Xbox and PlayStation.
So
or Stadia.
Could the game be better? Yes, absolutely. Is the game in trouble? Absolutely not. And I don't think it ever will be. I would love to see it continue to thrive the way it did at its peaks, like Shadowkeep, Taken King. The best moment when Trials was first introduced. I would love to see that continue. But maybe that's just not realistic, right?
Not within the current space that we're working with. They need to do some massive overhauls to the reward system and investing and how these systems work in order for us to really care again about all of these things. So
yeah. Well, Speaking of the COVID-19 thing, one of the things on their TWAB was that they're doing a charity event for COVID-19. I'm not sure if you guys saw that, but they're going to announce that on Monday. So maybe that will, continue to drive numbers up just because people like to be associated with good causes. And Bungie's really good at hopping on top of that with leveraging the Bungie Foundation. But, in the same way that these numbers are really high because of everybody's forced to be in their house, I suspect the numbers will go down quite a bit once the quarantine lifts and everybody wants to do anything but be in their house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's go over the TWAB really quick. So one thing to note is that the COVID-19 thing is definitely happening right now. And here's what they said and how Bungie is responding. As the world responds to the outbreak of COVID-19, many of us have been urged by our local government to stay at home. Containing the spread of the virus is one of the best things we can do to protect our fellow humans. If you're a gamer, you've been training for this moment your whole life. If you possess the heart of a guardian, however, you might be wrestling with the urge to do more. This is the question we've been asking ourselves at Bungie. Is there something we can do to help the real world heroes who are confronting this crisis head on? We've arrived at an answer that we think is very exciting. We'd like to share it with you and even welcome you to join us in helping make the world a better place. On Monday, you're invited to join us in our game rooms to talk about it. Bungie COVID-19 fundraiser over at twitch.tv/Bungie. That's happening Monday, April 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific. People involved with these games get a really cool banner. I didn't actually prep the asset to bring it up on the screen, but you can check it out on bungie.net on this week's TWAB. And yeah, it looks really neat. It's like a heart and it's very orange themed. So if you like orange, it's money. And this is one of the reasons why you have to remember, all things considered with Bungie, they do a lot to help the world. They have the Bungie Foundation. They're constantly looking at ways to help sick kids. And I respect them a lot for doing those things and their involvement in those activities. Was there anything else you wanted to say about the COVID-19 story, Travis?
No, except for, I think that part of the reason that the Destiny community is stuck together is because they do feel attached to, at least for me, I love when they do stuff like this because it makes me feel like my community isn't just frivolous, right? Like the Destiny community is actually can be a positive force. And yeah, I think this is great, but I do suspect that after this is all over, game playing across the board is going to drop. And that's what makes me wonder, like Brian was saying, we're going to see the impact of the development process next season, not this season. And I think the same thing will be said of like the player bases, right? So
you really think the player base is going to go down season over season?
I think it'll go down once quarantine is lifted. I don't know for how long, but I think we'll see a dip. That's my theory.
Maybe a dip. I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to be impacted as much as you think. Not for Destiny anyway. Maybe gaming as a whole.
It depends too, also on like what the narrative of next season. And I don't mean storytelling. I mean, if the trend continues of a season where it's just like, hey, here's a bunch of reused content, but we're just going to put a higher number on it, so that way it's a little more difficult for you. And they continue that into the next season, especially since we can assume that moments of triumph are coming next season, because that's going to be summer. And that's what usually happens during summer. Then moments of triumph usually just means that, again, is, hey, do more of that stuff you've been doing. And they could probably potentially use that to help pad out the season in place of new content. So if that continues to be the narrative of seasons going forward in Destiny, I could imagine seeing player numbers drop off dramatically.
I think Bungie is going to have a model where they have a big content drop like Shadowkeep. I think we can all agree Shadowkeep did some really interesting stuff storytelling wise. And actually, we didn't talk about the storytelling beat that we got, where we know a little bit more about this impending doom that is coming this week with the last bunker being open. Travis, why don't you tell people what happened?
Yeah, basically, Zavala and Rasputin finally patched things up. They've been pretty distrustful of themselves, of each other since the Warmind days. But they kind of officially re-signed that alliance that once existed between Rasputin and humankind. Sorry, I guess he's an awoken kind. And so that we now know that Rasputin and the Vanguard are going to be working together on the defense of Earth and humanity against the darkness, whatever the pyramid creatures are. So I think it's probably just more set up for Destiny 3 or whatever their big next leap is. It'll probably continue to be, a piece here and a piece there, but we never really see the full picture until they give us something huge.
I just imagine we don't see them until Destiny 3 because, like, since the beginning of Destiny 2, all we've been teased about are these ships. We had
the post credits of year one. Yeah,
post credits of year one. Then we hadn't heard about them again until Forsaken, and all of Mara's. When we go to the Queen's Walk, not Queen's Walk, but her throne room, and then again in Shadowkeep, we got another tease. Even though we actually got to go on one, but no one was inside. And then
we were inside.
We were home. It was us the whole time. And then now this tease again. So it's like it seems to be like at the end of all these new content drops, we're just getting a little bit more about these ships. And I have a feeling that's just going to continue until something big happens at the end of D2. And then they're like, now we're just setting up for D3.
And you know what? I think players are kind of getting wise to the game. Hey, I got a big announcement. Oh, it's coming this summer. Hey, I got a big announcement. It's coming this fall. You got to be there. I got a big announcement. It's this spring. The pyramid ships are going to pay off.
And it's just good timing, too, because now it's summer, and summer is the time of E3 and big game announcements. So, and Bungie has historically been at E3 and announcing whatever expansion they have or new game, which I don't think we're getting a new game in fall. I imagine we're going to get a new expansion. So we'll see what happens with summer's season and what that reveal leads up to.
You think it's a new expansion, huh, Brian?
I think we're like minimum a year away from a new Destiny.
I think you're right.
And that's that's optimistic.
I do not think we're going to get a new Destiny. And I'll play the game, though. Let's say we did get a new Destiny. I don't know how they make it different enough to garner interest. They can't change the formula. They can improve a lot of the systems, right?
The problem is the engine.
They can make
build.
the engine
You can't build.
sustainable.
You can't build. And I think Luke Smith has already said in the past, you can't build Destiny 2 forever. Like you can't. The game's getting too big. There's too much stuff in the game, and it's also like at some point, all of the inner workings of this engine are just creating problems all of the time. When we get new content drops, and it's like, hey, you can't use this because this system breaks if we do this and things like that. And it's just like there's a lot of things holding this game back that I think Bungie needs to work out with a new engine, or at least a massively overhauled version of the engine they're working on. And to do that, they would need to launch a new game.
And you think
that's why I said,
go ahead.
Again, but I was just saying and I think that's why I think it's optimistic that we have a year until a Destiny 3. Could be way longer than that too.
There's no chance we get a Destiny 3 this year. Zero.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I actually agree with Brian, but for a different reason, just because I think Destiny 2 sold Destiny as like a fresh start. And I think that after how Destiny 2 has gone in the years since, they probably are ready for another reset. And it's really hard to do that with an expansion. Like I don't think Shadowkeep drew any like new players in, or if they did, it was probably minimal, right? Like the things that draw new players in is a huge. I actually have a friend who was obsessed with Destiny, played all Destiny 1, had every weapon, every accomplishment you could possibly imagine. And then Destiny 2, he kind of fell off. And now every time I talk to him, he says, yeah, I'm going to wait for Destiny 3. I'm too like lost on Destiny 2. I'll just wait for 3. And I think there's a lot of players like that are waiting for Destiny to get a reboot with 3. So I think Brian's right. And I think it'll probably be next fall, not this fall.
Not to bring up dead bodies, but as Sean Finnegan, ex Fireteam chat member,
the
once
ghost
said,
of Sean.
Because he always mentioned WoW, like World of Warcraft, and stuff like that. And I think Bungie needs their World of Warcraft. They need their game that they can build on forever.
And I have to wonder if that's Destiny 2.
And
you say the engine isn't there, but
the engine isn't there. At least from a quality of life perspective, like it's just not there. And I think they need unless somehow they can massively rework Destiny 2's engine and do a kind of basically like a relaunch of that game as they have done with like Final Fantasy or Final Fantasy 14 or other games that have seen massive resets.
I think Final Fantasy like 7 is, the game's not old enough. This didn't come out in PS1 era. This came out.
So I meant Final Fantasy 14, the online game.
Oh, where they like nuke everything and then bring.
Yeah, where they kind of just like the game came out and they're like, this was not good, and they kind of just nuked it and restarted the game. You know, at the heart of it, it was still the same game, but you know, with massive quality of life, better content, things like that. And I'm not saying do that and restart Destiny 2 story because that would suck.
Yeah, but for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So next topic, we're going to talk about Iron Banner. For the season is already upon us. This is what they say in the TWAB. Lord Saladin will be setting up shop at the top of the tower, and you'll have another shot at finishing the quest and earning the new bow. Bonus Valor gains are also enabled throughout the week. Iron Banner and Bonus Valor begins at 10 a.m. PDT on April 14th, running through 10 a.m. on April 21st. So this is a great way to get powered up. It's all pinnacle drops in Iron Banner, right? You can get your bow. And Brian, you got to be raring to go in Iron Banner because it's the best armor set for the Iron Banner that was ever made.
Yeah, I already made this joke, but
I'm gonna go with you, Brian. I'm joining down in the pit.
I did the quest. I was just sort of playing. I don't remember why, but I ended up completing all the I was powering up for trials, right?
Yeah.
And I hit 1,001 power, and I just never played after that. I just play trials every weekend, right? Because I'm past the delta where I need to be competitive in trials because there's no power to worry about. So small thing. I think this is the worst Iron Banner armor set. It's my least favorite that they've ever designed. And I actually really liked Iron Banner. Iron Banner has not done a lot to entice me to come back to the game, though.
I don't mind the Titan armor in this. The Warlock armor, I'm just not a fan of the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like the chest. I think it's the chest plates, man. I do not dig the chest plates, but you can put on the other looks, right? You can do ornamentation.
Which is quite a boon because you can do the Japanese style one that looks super dope on the Titan.
Samurai Warriors.
Which makes you wonder, it's like, well, if I can do that, then why would I?
Yeah. You want to get the set so that you can have good rolls on that set and then apply the better looking ornaments, right? But yeah, I mean, I kept my old set until I got this one, and then I deleted my old set, which is Masterwork, so it was Masterwork cores, but whatever. I don't know what they do with Destiny at this point. This Grandmaster Nightfall thing isn't enticing. Iron Banner's tired. They've released trials, and it's not stable. Like, they have so much to work on to get this game in a stable place, and if they really are developing Destiny 3 behind the scenes, then the same thing that happened near the end of the life cycle of Destiny 1 is going to happen here. They're going to get things to a mostly stable place, stable, and they're going to focus most of their energies looking forward to the next game.
Yeah,
maybe that's what's happening.
I think that probably is.
You got to think about like where Bungie is at right now. And now let's assume that they are actually working on Destiny 3. You know, they're working on this season of content, like, which, as an aside, like anything that's going to get fixed in Destiny 2 is not happening this season. It's, you know, it's going to be either next season or in the expansion. And like we have to, if Bungie is working on a Destiny 3, you got to think about like how split they are right now. If they're working on Destiny 3, this new IP they're working on this current season, next season, the expansion coming after that, assuming there is one, and then we already know that they're working on year 4 because they've said that they're working on year 4 of Destiny 2. So it's just like they're split in all these different directions right now, and you know, who knows like internally how that's affecting development on each specific piece of content.
I don't think that their next 2 seasons are going to be very compelling at all. And the reason I say there's no chance in hell that there's a Destiny 3 coming this year is because of the COVID-19 thing. There's no way it happens this year right now. Yeah. I don't know what they're going to do in the fall now. I think they're probably pretty far along on the next 2 seasons because from everything we've heard, they work like 5 cycles ahead. So they're probably working on polishing next season, and then finishing the season after that right now. And that's probably what they're doing from home at this moment.
Yeah.
Destiny 3, that's a whole other branch of the company. And you also got to remember they're developing a whole new IP from the ground up for which is part of what they're doing. And their goals as a company, yes, it has Destiny at the forefront. We did that interview with it was Pete Hines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we did that interview with Pete, and he talked about their goal as a company, and it's not just to make Destiny. Yes, Destiny is very important to them, but they're doing so much more than that. I mean, any company, you could ask any company in the world, they would kill to have 85,000 players playing their game right now and complaining about it like we do on the show every week. Like that.
The complaining that we do, first of all, is it comes from love. It's like if we hated this game, we wouldn't be making this show. Basically, it's like when people in comment section say it's like, oh, all you guys do is bitch and complain, all week long on Fireteam chat. And it's like we do that because we love the game and we want it to be in a spot where we want to sign in on a daily basis.
Yeah, definitely. And the unfortunate thing is we've done so much in this world. We know this world through and through for the most part, you know? We don't always remember the name of every single little thing or all the lore beats, which we also get.
Well, you know what? I challenge anybody in the world to know every bit of knowledge they have at the front of their mind when they're put on the spot about something.
Tell me the name of every exotic in the game right now without studying for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Easy.
Off the cuff. Or I'll ask you some lore beat and which card it was on. Like just next time I see the community, I'm gonna quiz you, and we'll see how many
literal flashcards of the
lore. It's a podcast. It's us hanging out with friends talking about it. So I really appreciate those of you that are a little bit more forgiving when we don't remember the name of the swords in the game, for example.
Yeah.
You know?
I could play Destiny for 500 years and still not remember the names of any of the weapons. I just don't even look at that. I look at the stats and nothing else.
Yeah, I just kind of laugh at this point. I'm just like, it's not a scripted show. Like, if you don't understand that, there's nothing else I can do anymore.
I don't have my vault open and going, what's that one weapon called? There it is.
Yeah, definitely. But what were we talking? We were talking about sort of Destiny, the state of it, and what was just
Iron Banner was the main thing.
Oh yeah, Iron Banner. I love Iron Banner. I have no reason to play Iron Banner anymore. I'm powered up.
I will say, that Iron Banner is here at a perfect time, which is when we need to gear up. It's the final sprint next week to gear up for Grandmaster Nightfall, which is great because I'm 1021. I've got 4 power to obtain, and I'm going to do that partially through the artifact and partially through playing Iron Banner and hopefully getting armor drops. Also, and probably crucially, if you don't have your like ideal god roll for armor, Iron Banner is actually a great way to do it. Get tokens and turn them in and get armor drops and hope for really good drops because as they mentioned in the TWAB, your loadout and your armor kind of meta is going to, I assume, be very important and probably scrutinized by your fire team. If you're LFGing for this, they're probably going to be looking at your loadout and like critiquing it and
must have Gallahorn.
Yeah, it's going to be must have Gallahorn over again. You know.
Oh, you know what? It's kind of funny you bring that up because I was thinking about Nightfalls now, and the more I think about it, I think that it would be absolutely fine to have matchmaking for Nightfalls. Would it be a perfect experience? No, I understand where the community comes from that, but not even having it as an option, I think is weird.
Yeah, it's a little different for Nightfall. Like I'm still of mind of like matchmaking for raids, like just no.
Yeah, I agree.
It's gonna damper people's experience in it. They're gonna have a bad time, and it's just like don't do it.
But nobody's playing them. So here are your options. You literally have nobody to play with. You can go to an LFG or nothing. You have no other option. That's your only way to get a raid crew together.
Well, I just don't. I also don't I don't know. I don't know Bungie's stance on it, but I'm not sure why they don't have a built-in LFG into the game, like something like the tower. Like there's a spot you can go to where there's just people who want to queue up for a raid, and then you can kind of just vet the people and like, hey, do you have a mic? Yes. Hey, have you done the raid before? Or
they tried it with tried it with guided games. The whole guided games
That's kind of
philosophy
still.
They
was
didn't really try though.
That's kind of half
Yeah.
baked though, because it's just a form of matchmaking.
It is.
And instead of, I'm talking about like strictly like what you do with an LG. You go to LG, you ask people, and you have requirements, and then you can you let them join a chat, and then you can base your opinion on whether or not you want to play with those
Yeah.
people. So it's like there's no reason why they can't build something like that into the game.
Yeah, the other thing we've talked about is doing a playlist. Like Destin, you said nobody's playing these raids. Like if they had a weekly raid and it changed every week, and that sort of thing, I think people would be playing these things a lot more.
I bet that comes with next season in moments of triumph.
So for the longest time, I
so.
agreed with you guys, but 1 second, I have an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, survival freelance. Nobody thought that would ever work. And it is one of the biggest boons to PvP we've ever seen. Just have a separate playlist for Nightfalls where you hop in freelance. You know what you're getting into. As soon as you go into it, that worked really, really well. It could potentially also work with raids. Just let people know what they're getting into before they go into a match. I've gotten pretty far, and I've seen people who have actually gone that extra mile and hit legend in Glory using survival freelance. It renewed my interest in PvP in the world of Destiny and has been a huge boon for the game. It's one of the best things they've ever done. And I don't understand why Nightfalls could be a testing ground. Try it out with Nightfalls, see how it goes, and then try it out with raids. The community has been so anti-raid and strike matchmaking for so long. And look how the strikes go. People know how to do those strikes. They hop in there. There could be a power threshold so that you can't go into the Nightfall unless you're a certain power. Guided Games had a microphone requirement that you could turn on, I believe. And the thing is, the community rallies behind these services when they're offered to them. And there's groups that would Sherpa players through Guided Games when you could actually get people that would opt into it. But right now, the message is, don't do that. Nobody uses that. You have to use the LFG. So I think it would be really interesting to implement this. And I would like to see the commenters, because I hear the same arguments against it all the time. But then I look at Glory, and I'm like, Glory's been a fantastic experience for the most part. Sometimes you get people who don't know what they're doing, and that's frustrating. But it created a boon of new PvP players in the space, and it helped populate that mode. So the additional effect of adding this type of matchmaking to Nightfall activity is you can get powered up for these Grandmaster Ordeals. You can get powered up to do a raid activity. Maybe they don't add matchmaking to a raid activity, but you know what? You're going to have more loot that you can power up your character with, and you can actually get ready to be accepted into the LFGs, who also are like, must have experience, or, you have to specifically go into a Sherpa type experience to be able to do it. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on matchmaking.
Yeah.
I think it could have reverberating positive effects, and I think that the positive effects would outweigh the negative in the grand scope of things.
So I will say, like, I think that's a good point and a good idea. A counter to that would be that, if you do survival freelance and you get matched with a bad group, that is a 5-minute painful mistake, right? Where, like, you ended up with somebody who's bad, you go 0 and 5, you get shellacked and the game's over. With Nightfall and with Raid, that can be an hours long mistake. You know what I mean? If you're dying and restarting at a checkpoint in the Nightfall, that could be 20 minutes, 30 minutes. If you're doing a raid and you're just beating your head against the wall at the first encounter, that could be a 60-minute mistake. So I think that when it gets it wrong, it's way more deadly and time consuming in a PvE event like that. So
I think it's also
sorry. I think you're going to know within 3 minutes if your team doesn't know what the hell they're doing.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Activity. Absolutely.
Yeah. To bounce off that, I think it's less about the functionality of the LFG or the matchmaking not working, and has more to do with the fact that Bungie wants to preserve people's experiences in raids, and wants to make sure that they're protecting people from getting into those types of fire teams where people can feel like they can just leave at any time they want because the raid isn't going that well, or someone doesn't know how to do an encounter, or someone's feeling a little shy, so they just bounce out in the middle of a raid. Whereas if you have like a pre-made LFG group, there's some sort of commitment that people have to it, so they're more likely to stick around. And I think matchmaking in sort of that anonymity to it kind of just creates that sort of issue where people will just be less committed to the raid in the matchmaking.
We have about 5 minutes left in the show. We're trying to hit exactly 50 minutes today for a program at IGN, which has allowed us to explore a lot of conversation topics that we normally wouldn't. So I actually like this. But let's talk about strikes specifically, like really hone in on how we improve them. That was one of the things we wanted to discuss this week. And we can keep talking about multiplayer, but Travis, what were some of the solutions that you thought would improve the strike experience in the world of Destiny 2?
Yeah. So I think the main problem with strikes is that there aren't enough and that they're rarely added. It's clearly not a priority for Bungie's development team. It's not really been a core pillar. Shadowkeep had 0 strikes. That was one of the things in my review that
Shadowkeep had
the Ordeals.
It had the Scarlet Keep.
Yeah.
Oh right. Yeah, I did add 1 strike. Or was it 2? Was it 2. Just that one?
It was 2.
Yeah, 2 strikes.
You're never reviewing anything again. I'm just kidding.
No, so you're right. There was
2 strikes, but they were missions that were repurposed, so they weren't.
That's right. That was the thing.
Okay.
That's what I was. Okay, thank you. Yeah. I remember writing. Disappointed in the lack of strikes, but yeah, you're right. It was 2 story missions that were repurposed as strikes. So I think that when strikes do exist, they are missions. It actually. Curse of Osiris had that same thing, right? Like the 2 strikes that are from the Curse of Osiris DLC were both story missions, or vice versa.
Same with Warmind.
Yeah, same with Warmind. So like,
yeah,
they tend to either develop strikes and then make them story missions, or develop story missions and then repurpose them as strikes. But either way, they clearly don't have the same level of importance that they did in Destiny 1, where strikes were like a staple. Like you always knew that you were going to get a batch of fresh strikes and that they were going to be separate from story content in Destiny 1, and you just don't have that.
Osiris.
Yeah, until Curse of Osiris.
I remember that was one of my big critiques in Curse of Osiris. Also, I'm like, these are repurposed story missions, and it's because like Bungie says like nobody plays any of their content basically. Like, what do people play in your game? Because you say nobody plays your raids. Like 1% of players play the raids. Like 10% of people do PvP, and and like. Oh, nobody really plays to the story content. I'm like, what do people do in your game exactly?
You know what they're doing, Justin?
Yeah.
They're all at public events, finishing it before you.
That's what they're doing.
The heroic version. Yeah. That's what they're all doing.
Yeah.
Brian, what about you? What were your thoughts about strikes and how they could be improved?
I mean, it's the same, right? We need a better like output of more strikes, because strikes are a great opportunity to introduce lore that we don't have to read. Because throughout the strike we're getting lore bits read to us from the NPCs who are either guiding us through the strike, leading up to whatever's at the end of the strike, the boss fight, and then kind of like resolving some sort of situation. And I would love to see more of that in the game, because that's great. And so and the other issue is the loot problem. Destiny 1 did it right. It had the skeleton keys, or it had all these specific drops to these specific strikes that weren't just tied to nightfalls. So I'd like to see them bring that back. It doesn't necessarily have to be the skeleton keys. I think the skeleton keys were put into place to prevent us from what we used to just destroy Omnigul all the time in order to get Grasp of Malik 10 times before we left the strike. But yeah.
I think they need to bring back strike farming for cool stuff. I loved getting 1 million Grasp of Maliks and be able to choose which I like. We got exactly a minute left, actually. So real quick, I'll go through my notes. Add more coveted loot at the end. Even the weapons were phased out before most players were able to acquire them because the loot was too stingy. Make randomization more in the event, have different enemy types in each encounter, and get rid of the stomp mechanic, get rid of the shield mechanics, and let us burn the bosses to the ground, because that is just an awesome feeling when you can tear through a strike and just nuke it at the end. Like, oh, here's the big bad. I'm powered up. I'm 1025. I'm going to melt that guy. And if you want to do the harder encounter stuff, you can do Nightfall and you can do Grandmaster Ordeals. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Agreed,
sort of what
100%.
I think. So I think there are a few ways that strikes could be improved. And any final notes before we sign off, guys? We got 30 seconds.
I'm spent.
This part's a little challenging. I have to end the show exactly at 50 minutes, so I'm like paranoid about ending it. Well,
you can just do a countdown.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're ending the show in 20.
Get ready to say Guardians out in 15 seconds.
Well, we do actually have to end it. So thank you so much to the panel for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time, Guardians
out.
We'll figure it out.